It's not quite middle of the night, but 2 hours. 2 hours after MASH. They have 2 hours of MASH, by the way, here. So it ends at 8 o'clock. It's Star Trek, right? I didn't feel like watching classic Trek. I was tired. It'd been a long day. Been a long couple days. Every time I come back to General Society, there's always a lot of work to be done. Go buy this, repair that. It's like the joke of like when you're a commercial fisherman or any sort of resource gathering business. Coming back to camp or shore isn't exactly just like, oh, we're back now, just party. No, no, no. Coming back means you got to deal with whatever you're dealing with and then do repairs, get preparations, refuel, restock, and you got to deal with all this crap. In the same way, being kind of a van life outlander, when you come back to, general society, it basically means, okay, got to hit up this food bank, that food bank, buy this supply. After you go to the food banks, as far as food goes, then you see what you've got and then you adjust what you need to buy to work with what you got. If you happen to be bumming or non-bumming, either which way, you're going to get gas. You're going to get prepared. You've already pretty much got your preparations for where you want to go to next, you know? And the one thing I consistently say, given the choice between the middle of nowhere in the forest, the Nevada deserts, the wasteland, hell, anywhere in middle of nowhere, I will choose the middle of nowhere over society every day of the week. And why? Why? Because you run into fucking these jackasses. And I call it like, I swear to God, I come back to the North Olympic Peninsula and it's always, you know the make and model, a crapper minivan, bad muffler, probably mid to late 90s, maybe early 2000s, crapper minivan. And it's about 9:30 to probably 9:50 or so. I swear to God, right when that cop showed up, I think he staged across the way because people probably saw me over here and then they called the cops. And at some point, so he was probably staged going, well, this could be interesting. There's kind of a pull off over to the side in the dark where the light doesn't shine. Some random meth head, drug addict, whatever, I don't know. I just go with meth heads. The peninsula's had tweaker problems for years. And I kind of view the tweakers like some sort of animal. I don't view them as really human. They're like subhumans, you know? And they basically roll up and they'll be like, they'll fucking say, like, they'll be looking for gas, try to steal a stereo or just stupid shit, drug addict shit, And usually all you got to do is shake the van. Because once they know there's someone there, a lot of thieves are like, well, I don't want to get stabbed or shot. It's that whatever they got in your particular van, not worth dying over. So I'm kind of looking out the window as this tweaker minivan shows up. And it wasn't even, I don't know, a minute or two after the tweaker minivan showed up that the vehicle rolls by with the light bar. And I'm like, well, who the fuck was that? I'm like, was that a cop or was that something else? They kind of rolls by. And then the tweaker's kind of in this shitter minivan. And I'm sitting there going, okay, am I going to have to get up? Am I have to put my shorts back on and go out and do some shit kicking, And it's like, it's usually all you got to do is shake the van. Or if you shine a light on them, a lot of them, they fucking scurry back from the light. It's kind of a joke, but they're like, then they know there's someone there and they know shit could happen and they'll back the fuck up. Now, I just want to point out, when I'm in the middle of fucking nowhere, out in the woods, I don't see hardly anybody. And out there, if you do see somebody, they're goddamn afraid to fuck with somebody out there. And the reason why is that they assume, quite correctly, that you're packing a gun. Good assumption. Because there's a lot of things. You're in the middle of nowhere and you see some vehicle. Leave it alone. Maybe if you see it there 2 or 3 times later, yeah, then maybe you look at it, check it out. It's been there for a while. But just assume that if someone's there, they've got a gun. And that's the thing about the outlands, the woodlands, the wasteland, or wherever. You know? In town, though, you get these derelict pieces of shit. And I go with the same thing. A lot of it, we've always had these derelict pieces of shit. Back in the day, the rent was cheaper. Drug testing way back in the day wasn't as prevalent. As our country has slowly filtered our jobs off to other countries and people from other countries, these derelict pieces of shit end up jobless. And they're either living out of their vehicles, like, hey, I'm in a van. But, I own property, 3 different pieces of property. And they end up just cruising around. They're high on drugs, some of them fake crazy. And they see something and they're like, yeah, I bet I could steal something and trade it for some drugs. I don't want to, okay, that's a little over the top for the description, but it is like that. And when they think they've got an easy mark, they might try to go for something. They see the vehicle like shake and then fucking like you just go pound on the roof or something, and they'll scurry away like cockroaches when you shine the light on them. But I'm telling you, of all the goddamn experiences I have, I don't have these experiences hardly at all in the middle of nowhere, because people know better. They're like, yeah, that out there in the middle of nowhere, shit can get real really quick. And you're in the middle of nowhere. Someone could bury your ass, burn your ass, hell, cannibalize your ass. Things can happen. Things can happen really fucking quick. So they don't bother. People are smart about it. But when you get close to the cities, there's just so many fucking skittering around little drug addicts. And I swear to God, the sound of the crappy muffler, that late 90s, early 2000s, it could even be 80s muffler sound. Mind you, my dog down there, what was he doing the whole time? He was just the shitter muffler. God, you know what? My sister had this. Actually, my brother-in-law now, a Great Pyrenees, who was an absolute champion of being a livestock guardian dog. And if he heard a fucking Tweety bird, I saw a cat, or he'd be on kill mode, bark mode, murder mode. My corgi, he's all like, he sees people and he's like, hey, how you doing? It's just like, yeah, buddy. It's that joke from, what was that movie? Was it Grumpy Old Men? I'm trying to think of the movie. Where it's like, look vicious. You look at the animal and it's like there's nothing fucking defensive about that dog. He's actually good for bumming change, though. But yeah, when I look at society, and people are like, why are you so, when I look at society, why are you so fucking think society is shit? Well, prove me otherwise. Where do I have problems? I mean, out in the wilds, okay, what's your biggest problem out there? The elements. Maybe a mouse. It could be a cougar or a bear, but I'll tell you what, when it comes to the big animals, I have almost never seen them. I lived in the woods for 4 years in my early 20s. I saw a bear 4 years, 2 or 3 times. And that wasn't even near my house. Or my yurt, I should say. I could hear coyotes here and there. But coyotes are usually pretty savvy. They're like, if it smells like man and dog, it could equal death, Cougars, I have yet to ever see a cougar. Fucking kind of cool, though. About a week or two ago, about 2 weeks ago, I saw a bobcat. That was pretty fucking cool. I was out driving I was in the middle of nowhere driving on a logging road, and this bobcat kind of scampered across the road as I was driving. a little ways ahead of me. I'm like, holy shit, a bobcat. I'd never seen that before. But yeah, I mean, all the big animals you could think of. I mean, I've seen a few big snakes, and I've been from sea to shining sea all over this country driving truck. That's another thing. I've only had a few weird encounters out there on the road. I mean, I had one time where I parked someplace, and once again, in a place that had meth issues, somebody stole my license plate off the back of my trailer. You know, you look at it and you think to yourself, like, who does this shit? Teenagers and fucking tweakers. That's it right there. Teenagers and fucking tweakers. Like, I kind of heard a sound that time. I was in Missouri when that happened. Was it is it the I-35? No, I can't remember. It's the one that got flooded down there. South of Council Bluffs, that freeway. How was it? Is it the 29? I can't remember. I-29, I think it is. But yeah, funny thing about that area, it's before St. Joseph's, in between St. Joseph's and the US 2, where you go up the cutoff to go to Lincoln City. But I was an OTR guy for 9 years before I took my break, and I'm looking forward to getting back into it. And I can probably count on one hand how many times I had some crazy, weird interaction in the middle of the night. When I first got into it outside of California, I had a load. I had to pull over to park somewhere. I was at a rest stop, and there was some guy, some homeless guy, and I know that trick where they act like, oh, they're begging for change in the middle of the night at a truck stop, and they're trying to get you to get there so they can pull a gun on you. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm broke as fuck. I'm working for Swift. And that guy took off. No issues. Because that's one way they'll rob you. You also have the thing where women try to say, oh, help me. I'm like, I'm calling the cops, baby. I ain't getting out. Fuck that. She ain't my bitch. She ain't my family. I ain't having that shit. And then that time someone stole the license plate. There might have been another time or two, but we're not even talking, maybe 3 times. No, 2 times that I can confirm. Maybe 3 times over 9 years. Now I'm back in my home area and parked on the side of the road somewhere just out on the outskirts of town. And it ain't even 10 o'clock at night. Day 2 of being back for resources in my greater county area in the lowlands. And some fucking rando shows up. In fact, actually, no, it was night 3, first night being down in the lowlands. Some random, it was about 4:20 in the morning. And somebody on an electric bike yelled something at somebody else in the neighboring area. What was it called? The neighboring pull-off. There was a big pull-off over here, and then it kind of ended, and there's a little bit of distance away. There's another pull-off, and these people pull off to, use drugs and shit. You could see I saw a used needle on the ground. Who knows? I might have been in their fucking drug using spot. The only reason I can go to the other one is I stayed at that one before, and basically somebody had dumped a dead deer there, so it kind of smelled like rot. And I'm like, you don't want to, that in the air just stinks. You don't want to be near that. So I parked at the other one. So I'm not even down for three days in the lowlands. And of course, earlier today when I was in the neighboring town that I grew up in, I was walking the dog over by the fairgrounds, and some random cop was like, scoping the back of my vehicle. They're checking the numbers. Is this stolen? Is this or that? Okay. And don't get me wrong, I just think it's kind of funny. So this is one of the things about van life. Especially when you own an older van, you are treated different. You really are. I'm just going to be real about that. You are treated differently. And the reason for this is that, upper middle class and upper middle class and rich people, they look at you as if like, well, you must be poor. Like, you have a brand new Sprinter van. The way you get treated, people act like, oh, you're one of us. You're rich. You have all the money. And by the way, there's probably nobody watches my shit, but someone would be watching this, like, no, I have a brand new Sprinter van. And I get hassled. Oh, bullshit. You don't get hassled like us. You get hassled because you park in the wrong place. Like, I swear to God, like rich van lifers, what's your problems like? Oh, Daddy didn't send us enough money. Ah. Older van lifers, what's our problems? We got random drug addicts trying to break into our shit. we got the cops looking at us like we're drug addicts too. Fuck. Yeah, whatever. There's kind of a 50-50 thing about this. If I had a brand new Sprinter van, if I was bumming change, I can tell you right now, I I wouldn't get the change that I get. Because people see the old van and they think you're broke. Let's be honest about that. So I actually kind of, between the trucking and the van life, I kind of walk the line in between a lot of things, just to be honest about it. All right, let's read the comments for a second. No, I didn't. Subhuman is pretty accurate. Yeah, spaceships. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, that sometimes does feel like an accurate way to put it. It is kind of like a spacecraft, and you just kind of like teleport between the worlds. You're here, then you're there. Whether it's trucking or van life. I hate to tell you, I like what you're saying, but you need to be on. But they don't need to be on drugs. I've seen a lot of. Yeah, I agree with that. A lot of times, the people that will fuck with you, it could be just bored teenagers. But yeah, generally, no. Look, let's be real about it, though. Somebody who's gonna fucking go and fuck with someone's vehicle in the middle of the night, come on. Most of the time, that's drugs. Alcohol. Maybe there's someone that's like, maybe I could siphon some gas. That's a drunk, but I don't see like just broke people. Broke people even have enough common sense to go, huh? That van there, that looks like death. They're like, it's like it's an older van. That whoever's living in that, like this could be death. So yeah, no, I agree that yes, there is the maybe 5 to 10% chance that it's not a drug addict, but not yeah. When you're out here and have some random interaction middle of the night, it's probably and somebody that's got a crappy '90s minivan, late '90s, early 2000s with a shitty muffler, and they're like, okay, so you're driving down the road and you see a van parked there, clearly some van lifer or, some smoker stony, whatever, or who knows, it could just be a fucking van full of druggies. Better park next to them. Like, better go check that out. Yeah, the type of people that are generally at night that are going to be rolling up on that, yeah, they're literally drug addicts. They're almost always drug addicts. And the thing that I think's funny about it too is the drug addicts aren't necessarily van lifers. They're not. Like generally they're not. What they are is somebody they could have a girlfriend that's on Section 8. They have some Section 8 kids. Sometimes the dude works under the table or has a legitimate job doing some sort of bullshit, or he's maybe faking for a crazy check and he's got his girlfriend on Section 8 and they got a Section 8, whether it's the usual apartment or Section 8 trailer park. And then the dude's just kind of a junkie. Yeah, I call him the Junkie Town Jerry. Like it used to be like old smoker stonies, which there was a slew of drugs for those people. But the Junkie Town Jerry is generally, yeah, what I've described as far as the economic situation. And they'll have their classic rock on, or they'll be listening to their metal. Let's say they're listening to Slayer or something. I'm sorry, but slew of tweakers listen to fucking Slayer, and pick whatever metal music, and they'll be driving around, like say they're tweaking, Always on empty, looking for gas. How do I know this? Well, let me tell you a story from it was before the age of progress. I came back to this area, this state, and I came back and I was like, I thought I'd do construction because I had some tools, learned a little bit. Boy, that was a fucking mistake. I should have went trucking. Well, I should have been a trucker at the age of 14, but I was back over here, 25, 26. I think it was 26 by that point. And I ended up working for this after trying to find anything with this company called, they call them labor ready. I call them slaver ready. Eventually, I ended up working for this pole barn company. And this guy, I'm not going to use their real name. I'll call them building jokers because they were a joke. I had a guy, and he's trying to replace his foreman. This guy, the nickname, he was Joe. He was named Joe, my foreman. Joe the Crackhead. That was my foreman, Joe the Crackhead. I was kind of a guy living in an S10 Blazer at the time. And I drank. After work, I'd get myself a couple cans of Hurricane High Grav because I was living in my S10 Blazer and I had to make a house payment in another state. We build pole barns. No power tools other than circular saws. This is before the battery era got really good. And, all hammers, all that. By the way, for all you that think that's a job that Latinos do, yeah, they do. But that's also a job that a lot of white people do. A lot of drug addicts. And by the way, I got to be honest, my boss back then, Gary, was doing the world a favor to some degree because he was employing a lot of people that otherwise wouldn't be employed and would have been a parasite. By the way, all those bums you see out there that could be swinging a hammer, yeah. When I was working at Building Jokers, we had Joe the Crackhead, Dennis. He was a meth head. He was a Nazi meth head. He'd open the back end of his toolbox, and there was an SS, on underneath. Like he was all about the fucking Hitler shit. We had one Latino dude, I can't remember his name, and another guy, I don't know, his name was Pedro or something, and he was an artist, but he was like Guatemalan, or he was American, but he was Guatemalan, and he's like he was ripping off Carlos Mencia back then. He's like, everybody sees me, and they just see a gardener. Well, I'm an artist, and I'm like, yeah. And one day I just fucking snapped. I looked at him and said, look, Pedro. Nobody sees the color white, brown, or black or anything. The only color anybody ever sees is green. And if you don't got a big stack of green, you're fucking transparent in this world. You're a ghost. You don't even exist. Because normally I didn't say much of anything. I'd talk occasionally, but not much. We had one guy, he was a good guy generally, unless he was on the juice. A big meathead. And he was, I don't remember what his name was off the top of my head, but he was an all right guy. He used the steroids, and his goal was to bang as many bitches, be as muscular as he could and bang as many bitches. And he says, I'll probably die of AIDS, but I'll live a good life. He had a son. He was an okay guy. And he says, what's crazy about it? He's like, I got this sickness when it comes to like lifting weights. I'm like, well, why do you juice? Doesn't that stuff affect your nuts? He's like, the newer stuff doesn't affect your nuts like the older stuff. He says, but when I look at you, I see a big guy. I know I'm bigger, but my mind says big guy, got to get bigger than the other big guy. I'm like, it's fucking crazy. He was a crazy, but the guy that was the cream of the crop with that job was Lou Cipher, Lewis, whatever his name was, Lou Cipher. And it's like Lucifer, and he used to go off occasionally about the Jesus conspiracy. He was fucking wild, dude. He was a riot. He's like, he was a Satanist, and he was fun. He was a cool dude. There was a couple other guys. One guy that had some kids that I didn't care. I didn't really He wasn't a bad guy, but there was another guy that got out of jail. He was a fucking piece of shit. I didn't care for that guy. Oh yeah, Norm. I never forget that guy. Norm, the last real American. I don't know what Norm wasn't on anything, but he was the garage door goer, and he was a hard ass. But you know, I didn't mind him. He was an all right dude. And what we're getting at with this is that if Gary wasn't employing all these like Latino dudes, they used meth. Dennis used meth. Joe probably used meth and crack. Joe definitely used crack. Um, who knows what slew of drugs Lou Cipher was using? You know, Lou the Satanist. Then there was, you know, the other dude who was a pretty cool dude. The guy that was Musclehead, you know, juicing. I'm telling you right now, if Gary wasn't, oh God, then there was Gary's brother. That was great, man. Gary's brother was the signature pothead. You know, and this is before weed was legal in Washington. And I was talking to him, and one day we were at this gas station, this far off job doing this pole barn, and he just says, you know, man, I don't think there's been a day in 10 years working for my brother that I haven't been high in 10 years, maybe not one day. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, my brother is a fucking dick, man. Gary was his brother, the boss. Boss man was his brother. And that guy was chill as fuck. And he was a hard worker. Now, bringing it back to part of the problem that you see in a lot of broke ass places in America, that ironically, Gary was doing a public service employing those people. Because these days, you know, I mean, drug testing is harder now than it ever was. And drug testing existed back then. You didn't get tested unless you had an accident. But those guys all had jobs. These days, you have these people running around. You got people like back then, you could make a living and afford a crapper apartment, you know, bungalow or something. And you had your stoner girlfriend or whatever, you know, probably some chick with daddy issues. You could afford that life. Now out there, you got all these rich people from California that 10, 15, 20 years ago were moving in up here. You're talking about black people always going off about, no offense to the brothers out there, about gentrification. Believe you me, in the white community, that shit's been happening for ages. Rich people from California, New York. You don't believe me? Talk to some people from Colorado. They remember Denver when it was Denver. Now it's like, you know, kind of commie class Denver. You know, you go and see those. You go through parts of Denver and you see that shitty architecture, that brutalist looking crappy boxy architecture. It's not pretty. It's not aesthetic. It's just kind of weird and fucking modern commie looking. People remember, well, that area is all fields and shit. Yeah, rich people from somewhere else move to some new place because the taxes are cheaper and the land's affordable. What does that do, though? For a while there, it produces some jobs for the local people. But then after a while, of course, a lot of the stoners, you know, the junkies and the stoners, they never buy anything. They buy products for that day and they pay their rent. And then they move on with their fucking lives, okay? It's day to day, month to month, year to year with fucking stoner smokies and drug addicts and a lot of the lower class. The people that really get their shit together are the people that, like, you know, you live in a van, you live in a truck, you do whatever you got to do, live with your family, and you save your money, and then you go purchase land. You pay cash for your property. That way you've got some land. But that's not what stoner smokies do, you know? So they end up in a case where when all the new rich people show up from, say, Silicon Valley and buy up the cheap land up in Washington, Oregon, wherever, they end up pushing out a bunch of the rent goes up, and plus inflation due to COVID, due to the wars, due to all of it, the inflation pushes up to the point where unless there's some decent job for these people to do, they can't afford fucking rent. They could barely afford rent back, you know, 15 odd years ago. I mean, let's a little over 15 years ago when all that was happening. They could barely afford their rent back then. Without the government assistance back then, they would have been homeless. So now you got a situation where a lot of these people, if they don't have some job building fucking pole barns or working some factory job, and maybe partially because, illegals have shown up and undercut what they could do it for, they end up maybe faking crazy and getting a check from the government, and then they're living in a vehicle. And they cruise around high as a kite on whatever cocktail of drugs. They go out there in the middle of the night, and they're like, they see a van or a vehicle, and like, I could steal some gas, because you're high, you spent your money on drugs, and now but you still need gas. And they'll look at something and think, I break into vehicle, maybe get some. Sometimes, I like my windows on my van. It's nice when you're in the middle of nowhere and you can just look out the window. But I tell you the truth, sometimes I just like a solid metal van because less shit to be broken by random tweakers. I don't know how to gauge the fentanyl heads. They're something new. I don't know what to call what the hell you call them, but like, because you had crackheads, tweakers, the fentanyl people, or whatever drugs they're doing these days, where people are haunched over half the fucking day. They're like kind of all like goony and moving around, like wiggling around and shit. There's a new form of retardation coming to society from that drug. But it seems to me most of the time, if you're dealing with drug addicts in the middle of the night, it's probably a tweaker. Could be a drunk. It could be random teenagers. But I'm telling you, yeah. No, that was a long conversation about that comment, but I'm 5 to 10% of the time it could just be someone who's broke looking to steal gas. But 90% of the time, it's a fucking druggie. And why? Because the druggies can't get jobs anymore, or they got a job, but they can't afford rent. Now they're living out of their vehicle. They're getting public assistance. Like, they get God knows how much in food stamps, or EBT as you call it. And then they're cruising around looking for something to steal. And that's, it's just crazy to me. And this is part of the reason I said years ago, I would love it if we would make a project called Operation Raid. And I'm not even joking when I say this, where the drugs would cause them to explode, like the bugs from the Raid cartoons. The commercials for the poison Raid. Raid! Imagine if it was like meth, or crack, fentanyl. Well, you could argue fentanyl is killing them off. Problem is, it's doing a lot of collateral damage while it's doing it. I sometimes think the fentanyl epidemic was Operation Raid. I'm not kidding when I say that. Like, the government just decided, hey, all these drunks, druggies, and useless fuckers that we normally would have sent off to die in a meaningless war. Hey, look, there's another shitty muffler. That could have been another fucking loser. But, yeah. Normally, we would have sent these idiots off to die in a war. Back in the day, they would have told, yeah, drugs in the projects. Yeah, drugs in the projects. You blame. You know what's funny about, actually, good comment there, by the way. You know what's funny about drugs in the projects? Everybody says that was the CIA, and maybe it was. But can we be honest about this? Who puts the crack pipe to their lips? Does the CIA show up and put that crack pipe to your lips? Just like with the tweakers out where I'm from, or the people shooting up drugs, heroin, fentanyl, whatever. Who puts the drugs in you? Even if the government puts the drugs on the street to just destabilize the black community, or, destabilize my community. I'm a white guy. Where I grew up, pretty much predominantly white, some Latinos, handful of Latinos, like very few Latinos. People will sit there and talk about like ethnic bullshit, and I'm like, dude, you don't even know. Go over to like the Midwest, the farmlands of America, and you're like, Latino. It's like the blending has happened. It's pretty normal, and you don't even really think about it because they're Christian, you're Christian, Similar cultures. They just happen to like music like Rancherera, which is basically Mexican polka. Totally different, But like the whole thing of like the drugs and like crack and the fucking crack epidemic back in the day was who the hell was fucking putting the pipe to their lips? And that's a conversation a lot of like social activists don't want to have. Even if it was the CIA, still somebody has to make that choice, to like whether picking up the bottle. It's just like fat people. I'm overweight. And by the way, you want to talk about overweight in America? I went to a food bank today, and they were loading me with so much food. I'm like, mother of God, they're like, here, take one of this, one of this, one of this, one of this. This woman was getting off on giving me food. Like, I'm not kidding. I mean, she was older, but I gotta wonder what that woman was like in the sack. 'Cause she was a little nutty, little happy, little like, I'm like, I bet she squeezes really well down there. I bet she does. I bet she break a Kegel meter. Let me put it that way. She was that type of wild, crazy chick, and she was high on Jesus and giving away food. I felt like I was doing the human incarnation of a really happy fairy chick, you know. But like food. You see these obese motherfuckers, and they'll be talking about, oh, the diets in America are so bad, and it's like, yeah, but I mean, it's not like if you go to Costco, you're the one choosing to get the pizza, right? I mean, there's a salad there, but you chose to get the pizza. You know, you're, you're the one choosing. You could get ice water at the truck stop or wherever you're at, but you decided to get the extra large soda. Like I got, back when I was driving, I'd get my truck stop points, my diamond status at Love's in 2 to 3 weeks. And the reason I went with Love's is because I get 5 times the points. I got free sodas all the time. I didn't drink free soda, though. I got free coffee as well. I used to make my own coffee, but I get free coffee. Now, I would access the coffee when I need coffee. But as far as the soda, I have this mug that's like a small little keg. I'd fill it up with ice water. And you know why? Because I was like, dude, I mean, I like a soda every once in a while. And I grew up drinking it, what's funny about it? How many of you had this experience? They talk about the real soda. And you taste like soda and you're like, most of us have never had real soda. Like, I was reading this at Costco earlier because you get the $1.50 for the dog and the soda while I was waiting for the pizza. And I was reading the thing for Coke and it says original taste. Because, there was that thing in the 80s, the early 90s, where they knew Coke and it went over like a Led Zeppelin, like a lead balloon. It didn't go well. It was a bad idea. It went over like the Hindenburg, So I'm thinking to myself, I have never tasted real Coke. I've had Mexican Coke made with real sugar, and yes, it does taste better. But when I think of Coca-Cola, A&W, and by the way, A&W with real sugar tastes a million times better. It does. Like cane sugar. Like you get a real cane sugar soda and it's real, it tastes good. But I was thinking about Coca-Cola and I'm like, I have never had real Coca-Cola. You can't get real Coca-Cola. Even if I had Mexican Coca-Cola, it doesn't have a little bit of cocaine in it. So I have never, it says original taste Coca-Cola. And I'm like, number one, this is high fructose corn death Coca-Cola, which is original Coke Classic, but it is not real Coca-Cola, And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, I gotta wonder what does real Coca-Cola taste like with a little bit of cocaine in it? About the closest you could ever probably come to getting that is actually getting maybe a Mexican Coke and then putting in just a dash of cocaine in it. But that's a whole side rant I just had there. And it's just like, back to the whole drugs on the streets thing. I do believe they have put drugs on the streets to some degree. And I think some of it is subterfuge from corporations, companies, other countries, China. Like, why would China want to fucking funnel drugs into America? Because it weakens our country. It makes everything a little bit shittier. Makes everything a little more complicated. Makes everything a little crappier. And also, why would people want to have a bunch of illegals coming in? Because then it makes it keeps the lower class lower. So, the lower class being lower keeps everybody, it keeps the people that normally, like I said, the people that would have been the drug addicts with a job, they could afford to pay their rent back in the day, had a job. And by the way, make no mistake, I always stick by this. These people were always there. The only difference is that back in the day, they had a job and they had rent they could afford. They were always with you. They just were living normal back then. Now they can't afford normal. So that's where you'll be sitting there in your van, relaxing. It's 8 o'clock, MASH is over. There's 2 hours of MASH on MeTV. And then you get woke up to a shitty, crappy, busted 90s, late 90s, early 2000s muffler in a minivan. Whee! You know that sound? Classic middle of the nowhere shit vehicle sound. Signature of broke people where I've grown up. And you get woke up, you're like, what the fuck is going on? And then right after that guy showed up, it was even a minute or two after that guy showed up, that's when that officer drove by and shined a light on what's going on over here. And then he kind of drove off to go turn around. And I guess that tweaker, I'm guessing tweaker, could have been, I don't know, maybe it was a fentanyl head. Crackheads are pretty rare these days. I know crackheads still exist, but out in the middle of nowhere, it's mostly meth. Meth, people shooting up opioids. But, yeah, that's one thing I gotta say that's made the fucking needle drugs. I'm gonna be real about that. If you drug addicts want to do what you're gonna do, can you at least keep a pop bottle around? If you're gonna throw out your needle, I mean, me and my sister were talking about this earlier, and she had a good comment on this. At least can you put your fucking your fucking needle, if you're gonna throw it out in a pop bottle and then toss it out so some kid doesn't fucking step on that? You know, it's just nasty. It's just fucking, it just brings down the whole area. I mean, I know a needle in a bottle isn't much better, but it just shows, hey, you're a drug addict that cares. And my sister's comment was, come on, you can't expect these people when they're high as a kite. I mean, they're in the throes of a fucking, they're in the throes of their drug binge. They're not thinking about that. They probably just toss it outside casually like, and I'm like, you're right. But that's one thing you'll see out here. There's a mountain up here, up Chicken Coop Hill, way the fuck up the mountain. And I used to park up there. Apparently it became a shoot up spot for a bunch of junkies. People with pickup trucks, whatnot. They get all the way the fuck up there in the middle of nowhere, and I don't know which type of drug they're using. But you'll see a bunch of used needles up there, and you're just like, Jesus fucking Christ. But I think it's something close to what Asmongold says, ultimately. Most of society's problems are being caused by 2 to 3% of the fucking populace. 2 to 3%. And it's not inaccurate. Because when I look back, when I got back over here, I moved over to the Rocky Mountain state where I've got the house. Place I'm renting out to a good little Mormon family now. I came back over here to find work. And when I left, it was really easy to find good places to park. Where you could take this very same van long before we had the cool lights set up, man. It's amazing for what, $13. I got these lights off Amazon. It's amazing what they've done with LED technology, I'm just saying. But I could find a park spot everywhere back then. I would have never parked at a place like this back then. I would have found a place right outside of town, there's a lot of places in town where I could have parked and nobody would have bugged me. And part of the reason I've people say, why don't you park at Walmart? Because of Wally trash. And it used to be, you park at Walmart because everybody could park at Walmart. But the problem is then you'd have middle of the night, some fucking stoner smoky would roll up and, some junkie of some sort and be like, is there gays? I was parked in my hometown a number of years ago and somebody rolled up. It's probably same situation. I was parked next to the local football field in the middle of town where the stadium is. It's not really stadium, but you know what I mean. It's kind of covered and whatnot with the big lights. I was on the outskirts of that, on the residential, and you show up after dark and park, and like this, it's late at night, and somebody shows up, and they trying to fidget with my gas. Yes, I wake up and I just shake the van and I go, I pound the top of the van, and they're like, "Oh shit, there's someone here." And I'm like, "Yeah, you goddamn right. And if I get out there when you're still here, you're still there. You're gonna be an ass whooping." And they fucking take off running, and it's just like I've had more interactions as a van lifer near the cities than I did in 9 years of OTR. And I've seen some crazy accidents. I've seen a few crazy things out there on the road. By the way, there's some junkies that were driving trucks, and you're like, the only reason they were owner operators is so they could get away with doing their drugs. I swear to God, like fucking meth head truckers and their meth head girlfriends. Just like Jesus fucking Christ. But they've cleaned that aspect of the trucking community up really well. I mean, a lot of the junkies are gone now. You go out there, it's a lot cleaner than it used to be. But I mean, I look at the heyday that the boomers had and the Gen Xers had back in the day, and I'm like, whoo, we're a long ways from that shit. From the super trucker era. But yeah, no. I think about it. Yeah, and like I've said, I come down out of the mountains or out of the wasteland for resources. And the best day that I can plan, I might bum change too. I'll plan out my food banks, and I'll come. It's just like I said at the very beginning of the stream. It's a lot like when you're a commercial fisherman, and you come back to shore, and all your workers are generally going back to party and do whatnot. They got back to shore, so go to the bar, see the fat Alaskan woman, see if you can get a BJ from her or whatever. I don't know, But the guy that runs the boat, he didn't just get back to shore and start fucking partying his ass. He's got to do repairs. He's got to get supplies. He's got to refuel. That's exactly what I'm like when it comes to, van life. Like I get back from I tell you the truth. If I find a place in the middle of nowhere where I can drop a log, like I've got a good little, it doesn't have to be a huge creek, but just enough running water coming out of the mountains that's clean. And I could be there for like a month or two. If I've got enough water, video game, like if I got airwave TV, I got my solar, got my airwave, I got more enough food, spices, stuff to cook with. To me, it's just like a mobile cabin. I take it up there to some beautiful place. And I might be up there for a month, and then I'll change a spot. Maybe I'll be up there for 2 weeks and then change a spot. But either way, I'm not going back to town unless I need shit. And the perfect go back to town is, I got everything just like a garbage route, because I used to be a garbage man. You do this side of the street of the highway going this way. When you're coming back the other way, you do that side of the street. Those roads over on that side. That way you don't have to cross. Every time you cross, it's one more chance for an accident. In the same way, I go and I'm going to be in that town this day because this food bank's open, that food bank's open. And then I'm going to hit up this store. I'm going to figure out what I got from these two places. I'm going to refill my water. I did this in the wasteland. I'd go into town. It was Mondays. And I'd come into town and I'd make a plan. Okay, I'm going to go. First thing I'm going to do is refill all my water at the park. Then I'm going to go do my laundry. Then I'm going to go out and buy some things I know are essential that I'm not likely to get at Walmart. Then by that time, I should be able to go to the first food bank. Now, I'm probably tired by this time of the day, so if I can take a nap midday, somewhere, because the other food bank doesn't open, I think, until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And basically, I'll hit up that food bank. And I hit up both food banks. I got this like a plethora, insane. Just like right now, I've got more vegetables than your refrigerator has in it. Vegetables, fruit, and all this stuff, canned goods, beans, rice. I mean, look, if there's one thing that almost seems impossible in America these days is starving. I'm just being honest. There we go. That muffler doesn't sound too bad. You're like, is it a Stoner Smoky? Nah, that muffler sounds a little too good. But yeah, you do a whole run and then you get back out by the end of the day. You know, when you're picking up that last food bank run, and maybe you got to go to maybe you get something really good at both food banks, and you say, okay, I need to go back to the grocery store to go get something else. And also, if you can find it, this is also in the wasteland during the winter. You can, if you put your cooler in the shade of your van, because it's December and January, it does get a little chilly. It actually gets cold enough to freeze your bottle. If you take a bottle of water, put it on top of your van at night, it'll freeze it. Not solid, but it'll freeze it. So you can actually use that to auxiliary your cooling. If you don't have an electric cooler, but it doubles your amount of storage, if not triples it, depending on how many coolers you got. So what you end up doing is you can get a block of ice, and if you do it right, because it'll actually get cold enough at night. Just cold enough. If you take some wet towels and put them over your cooler, it'll freeze those towels on top of the cooler. So you'll have a block of ice that lasts you most of a month if you do it right, because you keep your coolers in the shade. And you go down there to get more water for the towels down there in the Virgin River. But you go into town, you get everything you need in one fucking day. And you're reloaded, refreshed. As far as food, you got a plethora of food, junk food, all sorts of shit. Shit that you would think about buying, but you never will because it costs too much, but you got it for free now. And mind you, don't ever feel bad about getting free food from a food bank, because the food banks get that food from the grocery stores, who then, when they give it away, they don't give it away. They claim it on their taxes. And you pay taxes for the farmer, you pay taxes for the truckers that moved it, you paid taxes for the people that turned it into the canned food or dried food, the factories, and then the people that trucked it around again, once again, tax deductions. Those tax deductions came out of your paycheck at some point. The people that that's part of the reason that people that get EBT get so fat, because if they go to the food banks and they've got EBT, you can go to the Dollar Tree and buy all the worst shit on EBT. And that's just fucking truth right there. But yeah, that's actually why Americans are so fucking fat. That's why the poor Americans are so goddamn fat, is because between the food banks that give you everything and then some, and then you just gotta have to buy a few little extras and some spices to make some really goddamn good food. Then you have people like a 4-person family getting like $750 to $800 for 4 people. And they can go to Costco. They could buy the highest quality cuts of meat. They could go to, wherever. And they could go to the Dollar Tree and just buy fucking trash. Like high fructose corn death. They could buy energy drinks, all that shit. That's part of the reason Americans are so goddamn fat. Our system is set up. If you starve in America, it's self-inflicted. Or you just really have really neglectful, hateful parents. It's like almost impossible. This is like, if you're skinny and starving in America, it literally is by a choice, because the other choice is, hey, here's free food. Here's EBT, But yeah, I'd go into town and I'd get everything I need, and I'd be back in the wasteland that night. And when I was starting to gear up to do that last food bank, I was going to go in, I'd crack that energy drink, a Rockstar fruit punch, and I'd chug probably a third of it, if not, maybe a third of it. And then I'd go over to the food bank line, and I'd stand in line with all the other people. And then I'd get that food there. I'd load up. One time I got a whole ass spiral ham. I've gotten turkeys. You get big ass birthday cakes. You get it all. And I'd go back to my little patch of wasteland out, where the Bundy standoff happened, out there, up on a hill, actually, where on my settings, what do you call it? The background for my channel, those power lines there, that's where a sniper was set to try to take out Bundy. And I actually was camped around that same area. I didn't realize that till years later when I was watching a documentary. I'm like, holy shit, that was my camp spot. I used to meditate right where those snipers were at. I was just out there staring at the fucking desert, the Virgin River, And, it'd be a nice, cool morning. Wake up, watch Little House on the Prairie on Cozy TV. No problems, no issues. You almost never see anybody. There'd be the old person, to go up there to dig gravel out of the wash. And then they go and fire their 22, probably 50 to 150 times a day up there at the shooting spot. It was chill as fuck. You'd see some feral cattle. No problems, no issues, no people. But yeah, I come back to society. And what do I got to deal with? What do I got to deal with? It's either fucking druggies, cruising around in their vehicles, looking for gas, looking to steal shit. Or it's the police looking for druggies, and then the police profiling my vehicle. What are you doing here? What are you doing? I'm parked. I was sleeping. The cop earlier, I'm like, hey, thanks for scaring off the fucking weirdo. And he's like, well, who are you talking about? I'm like, that minivan. I don't know who the hell that guy was, but he just rolled up, and then you rolled up. I was sitting here in this very position in my van with the back window open, let some cool air through. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I've said it before, Bob Marley, that song, No Woman, No Cry. My version is no people, no problems. That's the truth of it. And, there are a handful of people that are good. There are some people that are evil, but then a lot of people are just middle of the road. And I'll say it's like what Asmongold says. They are literally only probably 2 to 3% of the population that causes the majority of the fucking problems. And a lot of these drug addicts running around now that don't have a job or get a crazy check from the government. So, they got a tent, they got a minivan, they got something going on. Well, they got enough money for a lot of drugs. The problem with those drug addicts is a little needs more and more, and sooner or later their $1,000 is spent. And they're low on gas, and then they start looking around going, what can I steal? And that's just the fucking way it is, man. And that's part of the reason, like, the area I grew up in, to explain it, our unemployment rate is consistently, I don't know if it's that bad anymore, it's consistently double the national average. And I don't live in the hood or some shit. So you got to put that in perspective. And there's a lot of rich people around here. Rich, middle class. And yet we still have this lingering poverty left over ever since the logging crash back in the day. Mind you, back during the logging era, those junkies would have been working in a wood mill, a cedar shake mill. They would have been doing something. They would have been out picking ferns or salal, moss, mushrooms. They would have had something going on. These days, they're just kind of like leftover economic refugee drug addicts. They're a lingering issue. And you could bet if there was ever a serious crackdown, they'd clean up their acts really quick. Or they'd be shipped off to Meth Island. And then the meth heads could parasite off themselves. Fucking Meth Island. That's a story for another day. You remember Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, where I'd have Meth Island with the tweaker hunter. But that's a whole separate day, whole separate story. Anyhow, any of you that are watching me, y'all have a good night. Y'all take it easy. I'm going to see what's on TV. Now that I'm fucking awake again. Gets the adrenaline going, having someone fuck with you at night. Couldn't they have fucked with me at 2 a.m? Or 4 a.m? Wake me up a little early versus wake me up 2 hours after I go to bed. So you get just enough sleep for your body to be awake again. Fuck, I'm going to have to jack off to fall asleep or something. I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do. All right, y'all take it easy. Peace. The Tweaker Hunter.